Your life feels like a story you can trace back to the beginning. Except you can't. Try it. Think of the earliest moment you genuinely remember. A real one, seen through your own eyes. Not a photo you've stared at 100 times. Not a story someone told you until it felt like yours. Got one? How old were you there? 3? 4? Maybe 5. Now look at everything before that moment. The early years where you learned every face, your first words, fear, love, those years weren't blank. Your brain formed those memories. So where did they go? In 2025, a team of Yale researchers slid infants, some as young as 4 months old, into a brain scanner and showed them a series of pictures. A little later, they showed them again, mixed in with new ones. And the babies looked longer at the faces and places they had seen before, while deep in their heads, the brain's memory center lit up as those memories were laid down. By around their first birthday, they were clearly doing it, forming real memories. So the question was never whether you remember being a baby. It's why you can't get back in. And there's a good chance the memory you reached for a moment ago is not quite what you think it is. The psychologist Carol Peterson has spent decades collecting people's earliest memories, and she keeps running into the same unsettling pattern. Ask an adult for their first memory and they hand it over with confidence. A moment, a place, a feeling. Then you check it against the people who are actually there. And the details drift. The ages come out wrong. Separate events get stitched into one. Whole scenes turn out to have been lifted from a photograph on the wall, or a story told so often at dinner that your mind quietly promoted it to a memory. Uncomfortable with the empty space, your brain does what it does everywhere else. It fills the gap with something plausible and hands it to you as fact. So the wall is not just blank. It is disguised, papered over with borrowed pictures convincing enough that you never think to check them, which only sharpens the real question. If those first memories were genuinely formed, and we now know they were, then this was never a story about a camera that failed to switch on. It is a story about a recording that was made and then unmade. For a long time, even the experts guessed wrong about why. When Sigmund Freud first put a name to this blank spot in 1905, infantile amnesia, he assumed you had done it to yourself, that you were burying those years on purpose because they were too painful to keep. He was wrong. Nothing back there is hidden, and nothing is being kept from you. What actually happened has nothing to do with secrets and everything to do with timing, because the forgetting didn't strike all at once, like a light switching off the day you turned 3. It crept in the way a tide takes a sandcastle, one wave at a time. The wall wasn't always where it sits now. When you were small, you could still remember being smaller, and scientists have actually watched it happen. To watch it happen, you have to catch children in the act of forgetting. That is exactly what the psychologist Patricia Bauer set out to do at Emory University. She and her team sat down with very young children and recorded them talking about real events from their lives. A trip to the zoo, a birthday, a thunderstorm. 3-year-olds could tell you these stories. The memories were there, detailed and true. Then Bauer did the one thing most studies never bother to do. She waited. She came back years later and asked the same children about the same events. And she found something haunting. The younger children, the ones who had been 3 and 4, had forgotten most of it. The older ones, 7, 8, 9, still held on. Somewhere in between, the memories didn't just fade. They fell off a cliff. Bauer called it accelerated forgetting. Your early memories don't gently blur with age like everything else does. For the first years of your life, they crumble far faster, as if there's a machine running underneath them, breaking them down before they can set. So the wall you hit earlier was not always there. When you were small, you could remember being smaller. The blank space grew backward, swallowing your earliest years one at a time, until it caught up to where you are now. Which leaves one obvious, uncomfortable question. Why would a brain destroy its own records? The answer might be that it can't help it, because at the exact age you were forming those first memories, your brain was the busiest it would ever be in your entire life. A baby's brain builds something like 1 million new connections every second. It is not a finished library where memories sit quietly on shelves. It is a construction site mid-explosion, walls going up and coming down faster than anything could stay written on them. And one part of this matters more than the rest. The region that files away your memories is called the hippocampus, and it does something in infancy that it barely does in an adult. It grows brand new neurons, in bulk, and crams them into a circuit that is already running. 2 neuroscientists, Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn, followed this thread in their lab in Toronto. They showed that when the brain floods itself with new neurons like this, the fresh wiring physically disturbs the memories already stored there. Picture a single memory as a path worn into a field. Now imagine thousands of new roads being cut through that same field every day. The old path is not erased on purpose. It just gets built over, crossed out, lost in the noise of a brain growing too fast to hold still. And Franklin and Jocelyn showed it ran both ways. Slow the new neurons down, and old memories survived longer. Speed them up, and memories that should have lasted simply vanished. The very thing turning you into a person, a brain wiring itself at an impossible speed, was the same thing quietly taking apart your record of it. But fast wiring cannot be the whole story. Because forgetting a memory and never being able to build one in the first place are two different problems, and that is the second half of it. To keep a memory the way you keep them now, a scene you can replay, narrate, walk back into, you need two things a baby simply does not have yet. You need language, and you need a self to hang the memory on. Think about how you actually store a memory. You wrap it in words, you place it in a story that happened to someone, to you. A baby has neither. There is no running narrator yet, and no clear sense of a me that all of this is happening to. Two researchers, Gabrielle Simcog and Harleen Hain, showed this with unnerving precision. They taught toddlers to use a strange little machine at an age before the children had the words to describe it. Then they waited until those children were older and could speak in full sentences, and they asked them to describe what they had done. The children couldn't, even the ones standing in front of the very machine they had once used. The memory had been filed before they had language, and language could not reach back in and pull it out. The experience was sealed in a room with no door, locked in the mind of a child who did not yet have the words to leave a note. You didn't just forget those years. In a real sense, the you that could have remembered them had not finished being built. So here is the reversal. That blank wall at the start of your life is not a defect. It might be the foundation everything else is standing on. The same runaway growth that shredded your earliest memories is the growth that handed you language, a sense of self, the ability to remember anything at all. You could not have the memories and the machine that makes memory possible at the same time. One had to be paid for with the other. And the strangest thing is, those years did not leave you completely. They just did not stay as scenes. They stayed as shape. The way a certain smell can flood you with a comfort you cannot explain, a fear you have carried so long it feels like it came with you. The quiet pull you feel toward one kind of face, one kind of voice, one kind of place. That is your infancy still talking. Not in pictures, but in the grain of who you are. You cannot visit those years. But you have been carrying them the whole time. Which brings you back to the face. Somewhere in those missing years is a person who leaned over you in the dark, again and again, before you had a single word to name them. You knew that face better than you have ever known anything since. And you cannot picture it, not because it did not matter, because it mattered so early that it went in before there was a you to keep it. Your whole life feels like a story you can trace to its opening line. But the first chapter was written in a language you can no longer read, by someone who was you and is now a stranger, in a room your grown-up mind is not allowed back into. You were there for all of it. You laughed, you were afraid, you were loved, and you were learning the entire world at a speed you will never come close to again. It happened. It was real. You just can't get back in.